What up, guys? Joachim here, Justin Morgan, and in this video I am going to talk a little bit about the recent developments with people proposing things. This was from Ancient Faith Radio. They were set to have an interview with somebody discussing the role of the deaconess. And I think, as Father John Whiteford pointed out very well, what they're really proposing is not actually the role of the deaconess or reviving the role of the deaconess. Rather, they are imposing something entirely new, which is a female diaconate, and they are not remotely the same. So their roles are quite different, and I think that comes up well in this video. You can see I'm going to read down some points made by Orthodox Mimologian here. Great page. Just a few kind of mints, I guess, to follow up on, and I think they make kind of amusing little things. So I'm going to read through these and maybe make a few side points of my own. But they said the editorial board members of Orthodox Mimologian fully support the restoration of the Order of Deaconess. We also support the restoration of other contemporaneous practices from that golden era of the deaconesses. A multi-year catechumenate, including stringent vetting of the catechumen's personal life, both past and present. Deaconesses will be involved in this process for the women catechumens. So they make kind of amusing points, but they also make very legitimately serious points as well. This era that we're hearkening back to with the deaconess, and as I pointed out, it's really Father John Whiteford that made this point best when he did say he was really the one who made the point that they're really not looking to revive the deaconess role. They're looking to create an entirely new thing that is a female diaconate, not the same. But one of the roles of the deaconesses were to be involved in this process of a multi-year catechumenate. And to what degree that is, it's particularly for women in teaching women how to behave in church, how to dress, aspects of modesty, things like that. But they bring up the point that the church from this earlier time, it was a multi-year catechumenate. So some of this, I think, has shortened to some degree because people coming to the Orthodox Church today are typically people who have been Christians for their whole life, but maybe they've been in some kind of church that is, has other beliefs, kind of heterodox churches that are, they probably hold to some form of heretical teaching, heretical doctrine, and there is some aspect to learning to participate in the faith, but maybe not a multi-year catechumenate is necessary. But this is another one of those things. The ancient church had the practice of multiple years necessary as a catechumenate before you join the church. Typically today it's about a year. I think that's what my family and I did. But something interesting to note. Another practice is the segregation of sexes during worship. I think there are still some churches that do this. You'll see usually, well, always, the icon of the Mother of God holding the Christ child is usually on the left-hand side of the church, which would be the north-facing wall. The altar, of course, faces east, and then on the south wall would be the side that the icon of Christ Pantocrator is on. If you look towards the very front area on either side of the iconostas at the front. And so the side that the Mother of God is on is where the women would sit, and the side that Christ Pantocrator is on is the side Christ Almighty, Christ as is reigning in glory, is the side where the men would sit on. So something to note there. The deaconesses would typically, at this point in time in church history, they had a role of keeping good order in the female section of the church. Head coverings for all women during worship, including the deaconesses, of course, as is documented in extant manuscripts. While we're at it, priestly head coverings are eliminated too. I don't know a ton about priestly head coverings, actually, but I do know that until very recently, until around about a century ago, churches everywhere, whether they were Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, they all unanimously had head coverings for women. Women always wore head coverings to church. It was a taboo thing not to. Around the early 1900s, you could hardly find a church where women were in the church, at least, that they did not have their head coverings. Of course, in Christian practice, this was only ever done in church. Outside of church, women would typically take them off. Not always. In many, as women got older, they would sometimes keep their heads covered, even outside of church. But, there was really no requirement for women outside of church to wear a head covering, but it was the norm and considered good modesty, good Christian practice that women typically preferred to keep their heads veiled or covered when in church. Next is rigorous application of canonical penances, including exclusion from corporate worship, from the Eucharist, etc., depending on the severity of the sin. I think this actually still is actually a practice. I didn't know that. It seems like there are like canonical penances for things to be done, uh, you know, for sins committed. I I think this probably should still be a normal practice. I didn't realize that churches had moved away from this, but yeah. So I guess it depends on how open you are in confession, which hopefully you're being fairly open and going somewhat regularly. In tandem with this, catechumens, penitents, energumens, heretics, non-Christians, etc., need to be dismissed from the church at the appropriate time. So if you notice, there's a point in time where the deacon turns around and he says, catechumens depart, all you catechumens depart, let no catechumen remain. And then at that point, catechumens are supposed to leave. This is not typically done in churches today. Usually catechumens will remain. I have heard of churches where they actually had the catechumenate class during that period of time. So it was an opportunity where like catechists at the church would obviously not be clergy then, or at least not the serving priest, and they would actually take a class back. So that's kind of an interesting point, an interesting way to do that. I think that's pretty good. But the point is not necessarily to ostracize people that are not participating in communion, but after the gospel reading, and the ministry, what we call the ministry of the word or the ministry of the gospel, it has been taught, preached, and read from. The prayers after that are uniquely for communion. So if you're not actually participating in communion alongside everyone else, the practice in many monasteries and places, and some places that I've been anyways, is that anyone not partaking in communion actually leaves. So they mention here there are some people that are required to leave, but technically speaking, I've been in places where the norm is everyone that's not partaking in communion leaves at that point and goes and waits outside until everybody else is finished. So, but obviously deaconesses would be in charge of doing this in an orderly manner in the female section of the church and then guarding the doors of said section. Multi-hour liturgies with lengthy hour-long sermons. We don't care if your kid has to get to soccer practice, Karen. All of Sunday is for Jesus. Okay, so yeah. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of multi-hour sermons in Orthodox churches. The readings could be definitely lengthened though, and on Sunday mornings we typically only do the readings of the apostolic writings, or particularly Pauline epistles. I don't know that, I think it's just Pauline epistles, and then the readings from the gospel. So yeah, maybe we should add some more readings to that, have a full cycle of Old Testament readings that go along with that on Sunday morning to just draw on that thing. I think Justin Martyr actually writes that they read from the writings of the law and the prophets, and then the gospel and the memoirs of the apostles. But I might be wrong. My apologies. I would need to go back and check on that again. I can't recall exactly how Justin Mortar writes that in his records of what the church looked like there in the 2nd century. Moving on, restoration of the ancient manner of distributing the Eucharist, with all communicants receiving a fragment of the body in their hands and taking a sip of the blood from the common cup. No deviation from this dominically established norm will be permitted, including the use of the communion spoon, intinction by hand, or any safety measures like multiple spoons, disposable spoons, individual plastic cups, etc. And of course, this is obviously referring to modifications made to how we took communion during the COVID lockdowns, where churches were instituting the use of multiple spoons to prevent people from partaking of the Eucharist after somebody else. So obviously not something that was done. Everybody drank from the cup. So actually the way that we do communion today with the spoon is somewhat different than this, as you might imagine. I've actually, I think I've been, I want to say at St. Patrick's Western Rite Parish in Virginia. They actually still do communion kind of like this. But I don't recall exactly the details of how some of these other parishes do it, because it wasn't exact. I mean, they didn't do it the way that like Roman Catholics do communion. They still use leavened bread, and I don't recall exactly the details of how Eucharist was administered there. I think Father Patrick Cardine, actually, I think he took the leavened bread, dipped it into the chalice, and then put it into your mouth. But I don't think you actually drank from the cup. I don't recall. But anyway, so that's something to note. But some of these different traditions of how the church has done communion in different ways. One thing that has remained common, though, is that it is a common chalice and that everybody partakes from the same chalice. That part has not changed. That has developed differently in different areas. And then more in the past few centuries, the Eastern Rite Church unanimously takes communion by, it's actually not a spoon. I know it looks like a spoon. I know, you look at it, it is a spoon, but we refer to it as the levi or tongs. It harkens to, or it references the passage from Isaiah chapter 6, I believe, where it talks about, Isaiah says, "Oh, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I'm from a people of unclean lips." And the angel takes the tongs or the levi, and he takes the coal and touches it to Isaiah's lips, and Isaiah is made clean in that case. So that's kind of a reference to that. But anyways, this was kind of amusing. I thought I liked this page, Memeologian. I kind of like all of these funny kind of Orthodox pages that you can follow on Facebook. I did follow it, by the way. I see that it was not there. I selected that clip and then I followed it, but they're all kind of amusing. I enjoy them. Orthodox Meme Squad's another one that's really good, but that's it. Hopefully this was a little bit informative and kind of amusing. If you've seen these, some of you probably rolled your eyes, but it's good information, good knowledge, good wisdom to have. So you guys take it easy, and I will talk to you in another video.